Welcome, everyone, to the call. My name is Charles Chamberlain. I'm the Executive Director for Democracy for America. We're honored to be joined tonight by Senator Bernie Sanders and, of course, DFA Chair Jim Dean for what promises to be a fantastic conversation. Before I bring Senator Sanders on the call, though, I want to make sure that you know that we would love to take your questions tonight. So if you'd like to ask a question for Bernie Sanders during the call, right now you can please press 0 on your phone and you'll be connected with a DFA staff member. Again, you need to press 0 on your phone right now if you'd like to ask a question. Unless, if you're listening to this call on democracyforamerica.com, you can also submit a question through the live web stream. Now, tonight, we're going to discuss how Senator Sanders is using his position on the Budget Committee to take aggressive action against income inequality. We're also going to discuss the 5th anniversary of Citizens United, and we'll talk about what life is like in the Senate now that the GOP controls the chamber. And I have a very important and juicy question to ask Senator Sanders a little later, a question I'm guessing all of you are wondering about, but we'll do that in just a few minutes. With that, I'd like to have Jim Dean. You're on the call, right?
I sure am, Charlie. Thank you. And folks out there, I just want to say a big thank you to all of you for taking time out of your schedules to be on this call with DFA and especially with Senator Sanders. And Senator Sanders, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us and talk about
pleasure.
Very critical issues. Well, thank you.
Well, Jim, it's great to be with you. And let me begin by congratulating you and DFA for your extraordinary grassroots work. That's exactly what we need to see in this country, and you guys are doing a fantastic job.
Well, I appreciate that. And just to let the audience in on a few little facts here, some of you may think that not your vote doesn't always count, and no better place to look here than Senator Sanders to rebut that, because I think a lot of you might know that Senator Sanders first got his start as an elected official when he won the Burlington mayoral election in 1981, and he won it by just 10 votes. And because of that, we are incredibly glad, and we have been very, very fortunate to have him in over 30 years of public service, where Senator Sanders has consistently stood as one of the most inspiring and certainly the boldest political leaders in our country. We have been very proud to have endorsed him in his previous Senate campaigns. It is certainly an honor to have you, Senator, on our call tonight to discuss some of these pressing issues of 2015. And I want to just quickly close this introduction with a real quick story. A few years back, during the end of the health care debate, when the vote was about to happen, there was a lot of silliness going on. A lot of people trying to put in extra amendments. And one night, Howard and I were in the living room in his house watching the news about this. And the announcer mentioned that several senators were in discussions with the White House to get better funding and more funding for community health centers. And Howard turned to me at that moment. And he said, "That's Bernie Sanders. He's been fighting for community health centers for years." And that is the kind of leadership that we've had for the Senate from the senator. It was actually successful, and we got a little bit more money for those community health centers in that affordable health care debate and in the final bill. But also over the course of the last 30 years, Senator Sanders has been the leader in standing up for expanding Social Security benefits, reforming the VA health care system, and working to fight against climate change, and working for all of us as Americans, most of us who have not gotten a raise in 20 to 30 years, to do something about economic inequality in this country. So, again, Senator, thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. And with that, welcome to the call.
Well, thank you both, Jim and Charlie, and it's my pleasure to be with you. And once again, I am so proud to have worked with Democracy for America over the last many years. You guys are doing exactly what has to be done. You're rallying the grassroots of America, getting people involved in the political process. So thanks very much for all that you do.
Well, terrific.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Senator, and thank you for joining us. I think let's get started right away with the conversation. I know the members are eager to ask you their questions and hear your answers. We did take pre-submitted questions, and I think you're not going to be surprised that one of the most common questions we got is something that many, many members at DFA would like to see happen. They want to see you running for president, so I've got to start with this question right off the bat. Senator Sanders, are you going to run for president?
Charles, I'm giving very serious consideration to it. But before you make a decision of that magnitude and what it means to one's family and one's friends and everybody else, you have to make sure that you can do it well. So what we are doing is reaching out to folks all over this country, trying to determine whether or not we can put the grassroots organization together that we need. If I run, we'll be taking on the billionaire class. That's Wall Street, the drug companies, the military industrial complex. You know it. All of the big money interests, the Koch brothers. And if we do it, we've got to do it well. And that's what I'm trying to ascertain right now. What kind of support is out there? Whether there is a willingness in this country to really mix it up with the big money interests.
Well, I think that you can count on a lot of DFA members to be right there behind you, backing you up if you decide to run. I hope that you do. I know a follow-up question that many of them have, and I will say that some of the people asking this question had some concern because they really are hoping that the answer is yes. Have you decided if you do run, or you're going to run as an independent or as a Democrat? I think the interest, obviously, DFA members are really hoping that you would run as a Democrat, so you'd be on the stage in debates instead of trying to defend whether or not you're a potential spoiler. So I'm hoping that the answer is yes. Do you have an answer for that question?
Well, that's also something we're looking at. But this I do promise you, no matter what I do, I will not be a spoiler. I will not play that role of helping to elect some right-wing Republican as president of the United States. Without going into a long spiel about this one, there are advantages and disadvantages. There are millions of people out there who feel that Democrats have not been strong enough in standing up for the working class and the middle class of this country and taking on big money interests. And that suggests running as an independent. On the other hand, as you've just indicated, running within the Democratic primary system gives you an opportunity to engage in debates. You don't have to spend an enormous amount of time and money trying to get on the ballot in 50 states in the country. I'd love to hear people's opinion on that. But those are the pros and the cons of what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and we're really glad you're thinking it through, and I'm sure you're going to make a great decision. So I want to, before I ask my next question,
Charlie, if I can just make one more point on that.
Please.
And this I believe from the bottom of my heart, that given our politics and our understanding that we have to stand up and fight against some very, very powerful people, it is not only absolutely imperative that we mobilize huge numbers of people for an election, but that those people stay mobilized after the election. Because if there is a mistake that President Obama has made, I think he has not been as strong in maintaining the ties with the grassroots that helped elect him president. And what I can tell you, I'm here in Washington, D.C. tonight, the only way we bring about the progressive change that we want, whether it's defending Social Security, fighting for a higher minimum wage, fighting for affordable college education, dealing with the issue of climate change, the only way we succeed is when millions of people are actively involved in the political process 365 days a year. And that I believe from the bottom of my heart. We can elect the best person in the world to be president, but that person will get swallowed up unless there is a unprecedented level of activism at the grassroots level.
If this was a call where we could have every member on right now, I think you'd hear a resounding round of applause to that. There's no question that we agree with you wholeheartedly that that's the key to success. It's long-term engagement. It's working as hard as possible to elect someone, but then it's to follow up and having their back in the key fights. So couldn't agree with you more. Really glad to hear you recognize that. Too often it seems like people in D.C., elected leaders, once they get there, they totally forget. And so it's fantastic to see after 30 years of service, you definitely still understand how vital and important it is to have that grassroots support.
Absolutely.
So before I ask my next question, I do want to make sure that DFA members get to ask you questions directly as well. So again, if you're on this call and you'd like to ask Senator Sander a question, please press 0 now, and you'll enter the question queue. Talk to a DFA staffer, as we'll help get you on the line in just a moment. While we find the best question to start off with from a member, here's another question that came from our pre-submitted questions. And as the ranking Democratic member of the Budget Committee, you have a lot more authority to craft a budget which stops the decline of the middle class. It can really fight income inequality. We're hoping that you could tell us a little bit more about your plans for 2015.
Well, Charlie, I'm very excited about being the ranking member. And what I can promise you, having just put together a great staff, we have hired people from progressive organizations all over this country. We are going to not only fight against Republican reaction, and right now, as you may know, and your listeners may know, they're off and running. The first day that the House met, they put in to place a rule which will allow them to cut Social Security. So needless to say, we're going to fight that. But what we're also going to do day after day is not only expose what they are trying to do, which ultimately will be about giving huge tax breaks to the wealthy and large corporations, cutting Social Security, cutting Medicare, Medicaid, education. That is their agenda, and we're going to vigorously oppose that. But we are going to come up with some alternative ideas about how we can create jobs in this country and put people back to work, about how we can make collegeable affordable for all Americans, how we can rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. So you're going to see a real clash of ideas, and I'm quite confident that the ideas that we are going to bring forth are going to have a heck of a lot of support from the American people.
Excellent, excellent. Well, it looks like we've got our first question from a DFA member ready to go here. I'd like to invite Sydney Moss from Northampton, Massachusetts, onto the line. Sydney, are you there?
Yes, I'm right there. I'm listening.
Excellent. Why don't you ask your question to Senator Sanders?
Okay. Well, Senator Sanders, I'm very interested in the future of the post office. But I realize that in spite of what you do say and write, which is very good, about doing all kinds of protectiveness around the overnight delivery, etc., the more pressing question is, how can we handle the post office now in a way to not only keep it, but improve it if we have people in the House like Ron Johnson, who is now the chairman of the committee, post office, admittedly and openly expressing that he wants to privatize it and then give it over to private industry. How can we possibly save the post office and improve it that way?
Sydney, this has been an issue that I have been working on for a number of years, and we've had some modest successes and some circumstances where we have not succeeded. You are absolutely right in pointing out that there are a number of Republicans who, because of their hatred toward government in general, want to privatize and destroy the United States Postal Service, and that is their agenda. And what we have got to do is to work with our constituencies, and we work very closely with all of the major postal unions and with small businesses all over this country who know how important the Postal Service is. As you may recall, a couple of years ago, the Postal Service wanted to shut down 15,000 mostly rural post offices all over America. We managed to prevent them from doing that. Right now, as we speak, they are in the process of shutting down 82 processing plants all over this country, which will slow mail delivery service. I have got an amendment that is on file right now to prevent that from happening. We're working with the Postal Service, postal unions, to see the best way forward. But we have a real fight on our hands, and my view is that we have got to address primarily this $5.5 billion prepayment program for retiree health service, retiree health care at the Postal Service. Without that prepayment every single year, the Postal Service would be making a profit. We've got to expand the kind of services that they can provide, including getting involved into small level banking and many other services. So it's a big issue, but I believe the American people want us to save the post office and expand services within the Postal Service.
Excellent. I'm curious, Senator, there's a lot of talk about potentially adding banking to the things that the post office does, to make it so that we don't have these payday lenders they really rip people off and put in a player that can't break the law and all that. I'm curious what you think about that and whether or not you think that there's a chance that that can happen in this session of Congress.
I think it's an excellent idea for two reasons. Number one, as you indicated, you got these payday lenders out there who are outrageous, who are ripping off working people who do not have access to normal banks or can't get bank accounts. So putting an end to that would be of great service to the American people. And the second point is it would provide for additional revenue for the Postal Service. What we need to do is make the Postal Service competitive. There are a lot of things that they can be doing, should be doing, that they're not allowed to do right now. Right now, for example, Charlie, you walked into the Postal Service, you said, hey, I have a document here. I want you to make 10 copies of that. They can't do that. You have a gift that you bought. You want them to wrap that gift. They can't do that. So we've got to give the Postal Service a lot more flexibility, including banking, to provide services that the American people want to make more money. And when we do that, I think the Postal Service is going to be in fine financial shape.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I think that we fully support that, and definitely be eager to find ways that we can help you with that as we move ahead.
Great.
We've had a lot of interest from members on that. We have, speaking of members, I've got another call on the line, and we have Robbie Blake in Bronson, Florida. Robbie, are you there?
Yeah.
Excellent. Would you like to ask your question to Senator Sanders?
I sure would. My question is twofold, Bernie. One is, what is the current strategy to overturn Citizens United? Because, as we all know, the fish rots from the head down. There's too much money in politics now. And how does the middle class get some high-powered lobbyists to get the job done?
All right, Robbie, I thank you for raising the issue. In fact, I was just at an event today because I think today is the 5th anniversary of Citizens United, and I hope all of the listeners know that Citizens United is the disastrous Supreme Court decision that told us that corporations are people and that billionaires can now spend as much money as they want on political campaigns, including contributions that are not disclosed, dark money. The result of Citizens United has been that the Koch brothers and other very wealthy people are spending hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars buying elections. There was a piece in the Washington Post a few weeks ago, and if you can believe it, what they said is, the Koch brothers are building a political database which is stronger than the Republican Party's database, if you can believe that. It may well be that within a few years, it will not be the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, which is the major political force in America, but literally the Koch brothers political organization, which extends from school board to President of the United States in terms of campaigns. This is an absolute disaster, and it is an effort which will undermine American democracy. Now, you ask, what is the best route forward? Well, clearly, we have got to overturn this horrendous decision. There are some 17 states in the country, including my state of Vermont, which have gone on record and saying we want to overturn Citizens United. We need people in 50 states of America to start talking to their state senators, their state representatives, their governors, and saying, speak out. We need resolutions to go on record and saying we want to overturn Citizens United. We want the Congress to pass a constitutional amendment and get it to the states. And then, in my view, after we accomplish that, I think we have to move to public funding of elections. The situation now is you cannot believe how much time members of Congress and others spending on the telephone raising money, rather than doing the work of the people. And it is a very corrupt situation. And I would say that there is no issue out there, none domestically, more important than overturning the Citizens United decision.
Yeah, I think you've got DFA members all across the country that certainly agree with you that. Today we delivered over 100,000 signatures to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in support of your amendment. and we did that in a big event because the U.S. Chamber of Commerce spent literally millions and millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, one of the largest spenders in the last election, and it's perverting the process. It's damaging.
It is absolutely perverting the process. I mean, example after example, all over the country, polls are clear. The American people want to raise the minimum wage. Well, guess what? A lot of employers are putting huge amounts of money into campaigns, and they don't want to raise the minimum wage. So it doesn't matter what the people want. The people want to make college affordable. The people do not want to see Wall Street, do not want to see Congress repeal sections of Dodd-Frank, which will result in taxpayers having to bail out Wall Street again. But Wall Street contributes huge amounts of money. So no matter what issue you are concerned about, the economy, healthcare, education, climate change, you must be concerned about campaign finance and the need to overturn the Citizens United decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of the conversations that we've been having with members and the pre-submitted questions center around what Democracy for America and our members consider is, the biggest issue of our time, and you've called it the biggest moral issue of our time, and that's the fight against income inequality. Mm-hmm. Recently, you have Jeb Bush, Mitt Romney, Mr. 47%, saying that he wants to appeal to poor people if he runs. It's clear that the Republicans are sort of trying to take on this idea that they can do some kind of populist economic message. I'm curious, what do you think of that? Obviously, it seems hollow that Mr. 47% could be calling for that.
Right.
You have thoughts on that?
Well, look, what the Republicans always do, and they do it very cleverly, we have to acknowledge that, they make suggestions which on the surface sound good. They want to save Social Security. Well, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? But that means, in code language, they want to cut Social Security benefits. That's what it means. They want to save Medicare. Well, that's great. And that means converting it to a voucher program. They want to save food stamps, which means cutting back on food stamps substantially. So what you see time and time again is people saying what sounds nice. In this case, well, we want to help people who are low income. And how do we do that? Well, let me guess. My guess is that they will talk about trickle-down economics, and if we can only give more tax breaks to the wealthy and to large corporations, this will create all kinds of new jobs which will benefit low-income people. That will be their approach. So they sound good. Their ideas sound noble, but at the end of the day, the proposals that they'll bring forth are proposals which benefit the elderly, benefit the very wealthiest people in this country. Remember, these are the guys who did cut in the House nutrition programs, massive cuts in Medicaid, refused to raise the minimum wage. I wonder how much they are concerned about low-income people.
Yeah, I don't think they're very concerned. If you look at the State of the Union last night, we didn't see them standing up for numerous fantastic proposals. They wouldn't even clap for them. I'm curious, do you have you're a weekend or so in working in a Senate that's now being controlled by Mitch McConnell and the Republicans. How bad is it going to be? How bad is the next 2 years going to be?
Well, it's funny. These guys. There was a document that came out. We released it. It's on our website, sanders.senate.gov, which talks about the agenda that the Koch brothers brought forth in 1980 when David Koch was running for vice president of the United States. And if you look at that agenda, it is exactly the agenda that the Republicans are bringing forth. The Koch brothers talked about eventually eliminating Social Security. Well, these guys today don't want to eliminate Social Security, but they're going to be, one of their first proposals, as I mentioned earlier, is to cut Social Security. They're going to go after disability benefits. They're going to try to expand military spending, despite the fact we are spending almost as much as the rest of the world combined. They have an idea that they want to move toward a balanced budget in 10 years and give more tax breaks to the wealthy and corporations, which means that they have to cut virtually every single program that low and moderate income people depend upon. So what you're going to see is a very aggressive effort on the part of the Republicans to protect Wall Street and the wealthiest people in this country against the middle class and working families. And our job is to mobilize the American people and effectively fight back.
Excellent, excellent. Well, speaking of the State of the Union speech, what do you think of that? There was obviously a lot of great stuff in there. I'd love to hear sort of your thoughts on that.
You're right, there was. And I thought it was a very, very good speech. I saw later on that CNN did a poll of people who had viewed the speech, and some 81% of the people thought the speech was, they were very favorably inclined toward the speech or favorably inclined. So yeah, I think it went over very well with the American people. And what I liked about what the president did is he said very simply, we are better off today, by far, than we were 6 years ago. And it's impossible for anybody to debate that. 6 years ago, let us not forget, 700,000 Americans a month were losing their jobs. 700,000. And then the Republicans complained that we're only growing the economy by 200,000 or 300,000 jobs a month now. It's a hell of a lot better than losing 700,000 jobs. Everybody should remember, 6 years ago, the financial system of this country, and in fact the world, was on the verge of collapse because of the greed and recklessness and illegal behavior on Wall Street. And many of my Republican friends who worry so much about the deficit, well, when George W. Bush left office, the deficit was $1.4 trillion. Today, that deficit has been cut by approximately 2/3. Have we made progress? Yes. But I think the point that the president also made clear is that there remains today substantial numbers of people, tens of millions, who are still hurting because for the last 40 years, the middle class of this country has been shrinking. And what that means is that median family income today is $5,000 less than it was in 1999. It means that whole lots of people in this country today are working longer hours for low wages. Maybe their jobs went to China and they got another job which paid 50, 60% of the previous job. And that's what we're seeing today. We have the highest rate of childhood poverty in the industrialized world. And in the middle of all this, as the president pointed out, what else is going on? What's going on is the wealthiest people in large corporations are doing phenomenally well. So the president said, pretty simple idea. He said, okay, let's ask the wealthy and large corporations to pay somewhat more in taxes. Let's use that money to make college affordable, 2 years free of community college. Let's help parents with a child care tax credit. Let's extend the earned income tax credit. Let's ask the wealthy who are doing very, very well and enjoying all kinds of tax loopholes to help us protect the interest of the middle class and working families. So I think that proposition is exactly right, and I think it resonated with the American people.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and you really make the case really well, backing it up. That said, there wasn't, it wasn't a perfect State of the Union. We have Sherry Willoughby from Oregon on the line, and I know she has a question about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Mm-hmm. Sherry, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. You want to ask your question to the Senator?
Yes, and I wanted to let him know when we used to have Progressive Talk Radio here at KPOJ in Portland, Oregon, I listened to him every single Friday and Tom Hartman called him America's Senator, and I so appreciate all that you do, Senator Sanders, and I absolutely will vote for you, and I will work if you run for president, and I will work very, very hard to help you get elected. My question is, I think the TPP is a terrible idea. I would like to know your position on it, and if you're going to be voting for fast track, and how we can work together to be sure that this terrible new agreement doesn't happen.
Okay, thank you for that excellent question on a very, very important issue. I should tell you that throughout my congressional career, both in the House and the Senate, I have voted against every one of these trade agreements and certainly intend to oppose fast track and the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, why do I do that? Let's take a deep breath and try to ask ourselves, why is it that despite all of the increases we have seen in recent years in technology and productivity, why is it that the middle class is disappearing, that real wages have gone down for millions of American workers? How did that happen? Well, there are a number of factors, but certainly one of them is these disastrous trade agreements like NAFTA, CAFTA, permanent normal trade relations with China. And these agreements were all brought forward and pushed by corporate America. And these agreements, during the discussion, we were promised that huge numbers of jobs would be created. The fact is that permanent normal trade relations with China has led to the loss of more than 3 million American jobs. NAFTA has led to the loss of about 1 million American jobs. And since 2001, if people can believe this, we have seen the closing of 60,000 factories in the United States of America. Just a report that came out a few days ago. My state of Vermont, last 10 years, we've lost, I think, about 30% of our manufacturing jobs. And this is true all over America. Now, factories close down for a number of reasons. It's not only trade, but trade plays a major role because what corporations have done is they said, why do I want to pay an American worker $15 an hour, $20 an hour, provide health care, have to deal with environmental regulations, have to deal with unions, when I can go to China or other countries and pay people much, much lower wages? And that is exactly what has happened. So I am strongly opposed to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I hope very much that we can beat fast track, and if we can beat fast track, we kill this agreement, which is what we should do. We need to demand that corporate America start investing in the United States of America, create jobs here rather than in China. And I think the TPP is just another trade agreement, a very large trade agreement built on the same principles that NAFTA was built on, and that is a losing proposition for American workers.
Bernie, do you have a feeling of what we can do to actually beat fast track with a Republican-controlled Congress and a president that seems like he wants to do it? How are we going to stop this?
Well, we're going to really need some coalition politics and some bringing together some very, very strange bedfellows. Because on this issue, when you look at the history of trade agreements in the United States, it would not be accurate to just blame the Republicans. You can. You got Reagan there, and you got Bush 1, and you got Bush 2, and that's true. But you also have to remember that you had Bill Clinton pushing NAFTA, and you have Barack Obama pushing the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So you've seen both Democratic and Republican presidents pushing these very bad trade agreements. So I think we're going to have to reach out to our conservative friends who, for a number of reasons, sometimes not our reasons, sometimes a little bit differently, there's an issue out there that is not just the loss of jobs. There's this issue of sovereignty, which is some of the issue that some of our conservative friends care about, and I care about. And that is that right now, let's say the state of Vermont passes a strong environmental law. It is possible that foreign corporations could take laws passed in Vermont or passed in California or passed by the federal government and take them to an international court if it threatens the profits of these multinational corporations from abroad. And I don't want to see that happen. I think the people of the United States should make up their own minds about environmental laws or labor laws or whatever it is. This TPP would have a serious impact in low-income countries in terms of the cost of prescription drugs. It would make it harder for countries to move toward generic drugs as opposed to brand-named drugs. So there's a lot of – this is a big deal. And the last point that I would make about it is that it has been an extremely non-transparent process. It is hard, without going into great detail here, I can tell you that members of Congress cannot walk into the office, copy provisions, have experts, their staff with them, can't do that. The only people who know what's really in the agreement are the big multinational corporations. So what we have got to do is develop coalition politics here, work with some of our conservative friends, and get some Republicans in the House. I think the overwhelming majority of Democrats are against it. We've got to rally some more Republicans to stand up to that, and we've got a shot to beat it.
Senator, you're just speaking music to the ears of DFA members across the country. We've been working very hard to try to stop Fast Track and the Trans-Pacific Partnership for over a year, and we will continue to have your back every step of the way in this fight. So very, very happy to hear what you have to say there, and excited to hear that you think there's a possibility of creating a coalition with, some strange bedfellows. But the reality is, if they can help us stop this, that we need it, they need us. Let's make it happen. So
that's right. That is exactly right. Now,
I know that an issue that's really close to your heart that matters a lot, is head of the Veterans Committee, or now still the lead negotiator for the Democrats on it. I'd like to go to David. I believe it's Paschal out there. Are you on the line, David?
I am.
Excellent. I think you have a question to ask. Would you like to ask it? Please go.
Yes, Senator, I've supported you. I want you to know that my question is being asked as a Marine Combat Command officer in Vietnam. I did 2 tours. I have to fight for my benefits right now because I was involved in Black Ops. What I want to know is 2 things. Number one, what are you going to do to assure that our veterans are getting the proper service?
Okay.
I already saw, and am aware of what the Republicans have done to take away funds to get psychs into the VA. I volunteer I go to 3 different VA hospitals in Massachusetts, and I talk to our people. I've had to fight to get a young man who's been waiting for 4 years to finally get him in front of a psych. And they had it on record that he had been being seen. If you want to know who the whistleblower was at the Brockton VA in Massachusetts, it was Dr. Chopra. I finally convinced him to blow the whistle. That's why we had Senator Markey, the mayor of Brockton, and all the publicity. Yet these people, these Republicans, who are so, they want to go to war on anything and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But we were made a promise.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great question.
That is a great question. And let me just say this. As the former chairman of the Veterans Committee, the point that I made over and over again in fighting for one of the more significant pieces of legislation, veterans legislation passed in the last many years, is that taking care of veterans is a cost of war. Fighter planes are a cost of war. Helicopters are a cost of war. Guns and trucks are a cost of war. But anyone who thinks that taking care of the men and women who put their lives on the line to defend this country and who came home wounded in body or in spirit, if they think that that is not a cost of war, they are terribly, terribly mistaken. Now, I voted against the war in Iraq, and I think that was the right vote. But I will tell you that between Afghanistan and Iraq, if you can believe this, and this is true, we think there are about 500,000 men and women who came home with PTSD and TBI, that's traumatic brain injury, not to mention the many others who came home without arms or legs, loss of hearing, loss of eyesight. And we have, if this country stands for anything, it is a moral responsibility to take care of every man and woman who came home hurt from those wars and help their kids. And I just had dinner last night, actually, with a woman whose husband committed suicide after he came home from Afghanistan. And she talked about what happened in her family. And this issue of suicide is unbelievably high. People are coming home and they're at their wits' end, and for a variety of reasons, they're taking their own lives. So We have an enormous amount of work to do to make, as our caller tells us, healthcare available when people need it, make sure that it is the highest quality possible. And I work very hard on legislation to do just those things. We put $16.5 billion into improving VA healthcare. We put $5 billion into making sure that VA has the doctors and the nurses and the medical staff and the space that they need. So I think we're making some progress, but clearly we have to be vigilant on this issue.
Senator, your work on veterans issues has just been incredible, and I can't wait until we can get control back of the Senate chamber so that you can lead that committee again and continue to really drive huge successes. Fantastic.
Thank you very much. It's an issue that's not only important to me; it is vitally important to almost every American who knows how much we owe people who put their lives on the line to defend this country.
Yeah, I'm also glad that, in the process of answering, you brought up, home care workers. And, we have a home care worker on the line, Eileen Ordway from Springfield, Oregon, and she's got a question for you. Eileen, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Let's ask your question.
Okay, I'm a home care worker in Oregon, and I want to know what you're going to do to lift home care workers beyond the status of a domestic servant and help us get Fair Labor Standards Act protection so that we have federal law to give us similar protection that other individuals have in other industries.
Well, thank you very much for that question, and I know that there are many, many thousands of home health care workers who agree with you. As it turns out, as I think many listeners know, the Fair Labor Standards Act does not cover and protect a whole lot of people. And one of the things that we are trying to do is not only through legislation to expand that coverage, but to urge the president to use his executive authorities where he legally can to expand that type of coverage. So I think you raise a very, very important point. There are a lot of workers out there who are being exploited and don't have the federal protections that they need. If I may just take your question and broaden it a little bit and tell you another area that we're working hard on, and I think you're going to see some action on the part of the president within the next few months dealing with fair labor standards. And that is right now, there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of workers who are in quote-unquote supervisory positions. And that could be an assistant manager at McDonald's who are supervising two workers. And that person can be making $30,000 a year or $25,000 a year. And because they are a quote-unquote supervisor, they can be working 50 or 60 hours and not get overtime benefits, not get time and a half for their work. So this is another area that we want to make sure that workers in this country benefit for changes in the Fair Labor Standards Act. But thank you very much for your good question.
Yeah, Senator Sanders, we're actually this is the issue of overtime is something that the president can take action on as an executive action, and we've been calling on him. Our members have signed on. We've been working with Robert Reich to push this. I think we have over 70,000 signatures, and we did, I think, over 1,000 phone calls to the president over the holidays, and I'd be really interested in hearing what your thoughts are on that. Would you like to? I assume you'd like to see him take action on it as well.
Absolutely, and let me give you some good news. And I think sometimes people think, well, I made a phone call or I signed a petition. It doesn't really matter. Well, guess what? It really does matter. We just met with the president last week. And what the president indicated is that his Secretary of Labor, a guy named Tom Perez, who's doing a very, very good job, Tom is now studying the best way forward. In my view, right now, if my memory is correct, Charlie, I don't have the paper in front of me. I think the number is about $23,000. That if you're making if you are making $23,000 or less, you're working 50 or 60 hours and you're in a so-called supervisory position, you're not getting time and a half. Now that's pretty crazy. So we want that number to be raised very, very substantially. So if you're making $50,000 a year, and you're working 50 or 60 hours a week in a so-called supervisory position, you should be able to get time and a half. So the work that you have done and other people have done is filtering on up. And I can report to you, hearing from the president, is that his people are working on this now. And my guess is that within a couple of months, you will hear a changing in the Labor Standards Act, which will enable a whole lot of folks to get time and a half who today do not.
That is fantastic to hear. That's obviously I'm really glad to hear it and excited about the possibilities there. You know, interestingly enough, we were inspired to start taking action on this when billionaire Nick Hanauer wrote this great op-ed in Politico where he explained the idea that if we were to keep up with inflation, overtime would actually would be paid to anybody who makes up to, I believe it's like $63,000 a year.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
If it kept up, right? And so, the president has a chance here to really go big and potentially really, this is a way to go at wage stagnation and put an immediate impact for people that are, what I think on some level amounts to wage theft because
that's right. No, it's exactly what it is. This is the twin sister to raising the minimum wage. So I think there has been a lot of attention to the necessity of dealing with a $7.25 an hour starvation minimum wage, and I know you guys have been active in that as well. And we're seeing real success there. I mean, numbers of states around this country are now raising the minimum wage. Our Republican friends here in Washington are increasingly embarrassed about not going forward. But it's not just raising the minimum wage for very low wage workers. You got other workers out there who are working 50, 60 hours a week, are entitled to time and a half. They're not getting it. This is a very important issue that we have to push forward on.
Excellent. I want to really thank you for the time you're spending on this call. I know this is really meaty, and one of the things that's exciting, we had over 3,000 people sign up for the call, and I'm keeping an eye on the numbers here, and people are engaged, riveted. Nobody's left the call pretty much since we started, and it's just fantastic to see that. I want to pivot a little bit here because we have Rabina Tower in San Diego, California, who has a question for you about our education system and your thoughts for moving forward. Rabina, are you on the line?
I am here waiting and anxious.
Fantastic. Why don't you ask your question?
Senator, I would like to thank you, first of all, for being a decent and caring human being. That's so important today because I think there are a lot of people on the Hill on the other side that are no longer decent and caring human beings. But my question to you is on an educational level and specifically concerning the dumbing down of America. We are 53rd in the world educationally, and it's a disaster when children can no longer put sentences together. They don't know what a noun is and what an adverb does to help a verb or anything else. I think it's frightening when we are supposedly the greatest nation on earth. And yet we are doing this to our people. And I would like to know what you would like to do about that, please.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that important question. And the sad truth is that Rabina is right. 30, 40 years ago, our nation led the world in terms of the percentage of our people who graduated from college. 40, 50 years ago, we had great universities in America. University of California, City University in New York. You had state colleges in Vermont and all over this country whose tuition was free or virtually free, which meant that working class, lower income people knew that if they did their work, they worked hard, they could get a college education regardless of the income of their families. Today, sadly, that is not the case. So I think we need picking up on Rabina's point, we need a revolution in education. And that means, for a start, doing what many countries around the world are doing. If you go to Germany right now, what you find is that tuition in German universities are free. Same thing in Denmark, same thing in many other countries, because they understand a simple point, that in a competitive global economy, we need to make sure that all of our people who have the ability and the desire, who are prepared to work hard, can get a college education and not come out of school $50,000 or $80,000 in debt. A few months ago, I talked to a woman in Burlington, Vermont, who committed the crime of wanting to be a primary care physician. She graduated medical school. She's now working with low-income patients. Exactly what we need in this country. We have a real crisis in primary care. And you know what debt she has? Charlie, you want to guess what her debt is?
I don't even think I can.
$300,000 for the crime of going to medical school to practice medicine. Now, she'll repay her debt. But what does that say about an educational system which is making it harder and harder for people to get the education that they need to make it to the middle class, or that our country needs to be competitive in the global economy? So, for a start, I think there's a lot to be learned from other countries that says that, you know what, it's great that we have free high school. But today, public high school education is, a college degree today is equivalent to what a high school degree was 30 or 40 years ago. And we have to move in the direction of many other countries. And the good news is, I think President Obama understands that. And I think what he announced just last night, 2 years of free community college is a good start. I would go further than that and say 2 years of any public college or university is what we should be doing. And people say, well, can we afford to do that? And the answer is, can we afford not to do that? Second point that I would make in terms of Rabina's excellent question is that at the end of the day, it's not only making college education affordable to everybody. It is not only, and the president raised this issue as well, dealing with our disastrous preschool situation where you got moms and dads who are both at work and they're worried to death about the quality of care that their little kids are getting. 0 to 4, according to the psychologists, is the most important years of a human being's life, and we do a terrible job with so many thousands of our kids who do not get adequate child care. So we've got to work on that. But last point is, what we have to do is change national priorities. We got to say that education is important, that educators are important, that, yeah, it is important who wins the Super Bowl, and I'm rooting for New England, but it is even more important that the kids in this country get the education they deserve.
You know, I can't even. You mentioned, the $300,000 debt. I can't even imagine how somebody could pay that back before they're 50,
right.
or even ever. And when you have a student debt that goes into your the years when you're starting to receive Social Security, that doesn't make any sense for our economy.
Charlie, I have talked to parents who are paying off simultaneously their debt and their kids' debt. How's that?
Yeah. That's got to be fixed. That's why, DFA members are joining you in this fight as well. We are fighting. We've got over 60,000 people that have stood up and said that they're going to fight for debt-free college. We agree that community college is a great first step, but we do need to go further. We need to make college free for everybody, at least make it so there's no debt caused by it. So
that's
we're
exactly right. And Charlie, get on to the campuses. Let's go. We're going to do some town meetings in Vermont on college campuses. Folks should do that all over America. The rest of the world is providing free or very inexpensive college education. The United States of America can do the same, but we won't succeed unless the students themselves stand up and fight for that.
Senator, this call has just been fantastic, and I want you to know that we had over 120 people get in line to ask questions of you, and I wish we could just go all night and keep asking you questions, because every single one of these answers you've given has been fantastic. It's been substantive. You clearly understand the issues. It's really fantastic to talk to you. I'd like to close with asking you, what's the next fight? What should we do next to help you and help you win as we move forward in Congress?
Well, the immediate fight that I will be engaged in is to not only stop any cuts in Social Security, but to expand Social Security by lifting the cap on taxable income. But the broader fight is the understanding that the Republican Party is going to do everything that it can to expand military spending when we shouldn't be doing that, give tax breaks to the rich and large corporations, and then go after virtually every program that benefits the middle class and working families. And we've got to be united. We've got to be organized. We've got to rally the American people and say to these Republicans, sorry, Congress is not here just to represent your campaign contributors and the billionaire class. It ain't going to happen. You're going to have to pay attention to the needs of working families who are struggling right now to keep their heads above water. So that's the overall struggle. And by the way, on major issue after major issue, and I hope everybody understands this, our views are the popular views. Our views are what the American people believe in. Very few people out there, some but very few, think that we should give tax breaks to billionaires and cut Social Security and Medicare. Vast majority of the people think we should make college education affordable, child care affordable, create jobs by rebuilding our infrastructure. That's what the American people want us to do. So we've got the people on our side. Our job, and I know DFA does a great job doing this, is to educate, to organize. And let me just conclude by thanking you guys. You are having a huge impact. When you hear the president come up with this idea or come up with that proposal, it didn't come out of a vacuum. He didn't wake up in one morning and say, this is a great idea. He came up with that idea because thousands of people have been contacting his office, contacting Congress. So your efforts are working, and let's keep it going.
Bernie, thank you so much, and it's really wonderful to have you be able to, articulate so well the support of DFA members around the country. And I know I'm speaking for literally hundreds of thousands of DFA members around the country when I say that we really hope that you do decide to run for president, and can't wait to see you on that stage, making the hard case for all these issues and continuing to take the fight for income inequality, against income inequality, on the national stage. So thank you so much for being a participant in this call.
Well, thank you so much. Look forward to working with you. Bye-bye.
Excellent. Now, DFA members, if you haven't already, I want to encourage you to sign our petition supporting Senator Sanders' constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. You can find that petition on the web stream page for DFA Live at democracyforamerica.com/live. Senator Sanders outlined, a number of critical priorities tonight, really articulated them well, and all of which will be easier to obtain if we can take money out of the politics and fighting back against Citizens United. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining the call, everyone who participated. I want to thank all the team at DFA and the screeners that screened the calls, and thank you all for taking the time this evening to participate. And I hope you have a wonderful evening. Good night.